Hello and welcome to a podcast about something where each week I'm joined by fellow podcasters. We dive deep into some of our favorite subjects. This week Dan is joining me from the Save Point podcast for a third time for Old School Video Games Part 3. How you doing tonight, Dan?
I'm doing wonderful. How are you, man?
I'm good. Like I said, we've done two others of these. Make sure you go back and listen to those. It's not required listening before this one, but you should listen to all three. You don't have to do them in order though if you don't want, right?
No, but third time's a charm. So I mean, this one should be the best one, even.
Right, exactly. I feel like we really know each other by now doing three of these in a row. So, check out the other two. You want to give plugs for the Save Point one more time?
Absolutely. Like you said, check out the Save Point podcast. If you Google that, we should be the first thing that pops up on Google. Last time I checked, which was today. First thing that pops up for Podbean or wherever you download podcasts are. We're on so many sites, from iTunes to Google to Spreaker and Tuned In and Spotify and all of that. So check it out. We also have a Discord. So please join our Discord. We love new members and have so many just different topic rooms that you can jump into and have fun with. And, the link for the Discord is right at anywhere that you would download our podcast, or if you just go to Podbean once again and just look up the Save Point podcast.
There we go. Check them out. Always covering video game stuff. You probably got something on Red Dead Redemption going right now, huh?
We actually just recorded Red Dead Redemption 2 stuff, and our preview for Fallout 76, which will be coming out next week. So we're right on top of stuff.
Nice. Did you do anything on Spider-Man? I'll have to check it out.
I did do stuff. We did a lot of stuff on Spider-Man. I gave basically a review on it and impressions, and we actually have one episode where we talked about what suits we would want to actually see in the game, and we were pretty close on a couple of them. So,
nice.
Yeah, so it was really cool.
Yeah, that's always the great thing about Spider-Man is you have so many suits to choose from. And like I'm playing through it right now. I'm probably about halfway through. My game says I'm 50% through, but that's more because like I went out of my way to collect all the backpacks and stop all the crimes. Like I went out of my way to do side quests rather than going through the story because that's a little quicker and you can jump in and out of it. So I'm probably only like 35% through the actual story. But yeah, the depth of costumes that is already there for me is great. And then, I'll go like every 10 minutes, I'll switch costumes. I'll be like, I'm tired of this one and switch into a new one. And then I always go back to the Ben Reilly, Scarlet Spider whenever I'm bored of everything else.
Oh, nice. I think my go-to for the longest time was, you get a, one for doing the Black Cat missions.
I finished those.
So I have that one that I won't describe it. So in case somebody's listening and they haven't played it. But I really like that one. So I used most of the game. I used that one. And I am one trophy away from platinum the game. So
wow. I've never done that in a game.
Yeah. I'm one trophy away.
Congrats.
Thanks.
Keep us all posted. We want to know.
I will.
So yeah, today we're doing part 3. In part 1, we covered, first generation at home consoles, Atari, Commodore 64, that era of stuff, and, basically the arcade. And part 2, we did, Nintendo, Super Nintendo, Sega Genesis, and this one is going to be my favorite, I think. This is, for me, the golden age of, video gaming, because this is when I had like a part-time summer job that I could buy my own games when I wanted, or I was totally immersed in video gaming. So this is PlayStation 1, N64, PlayStation 2, Xbox, and we might even throw in a little Dreamcast, GameCube action. Maybe not much, but we'll see.
Well, you got to throw in the Dreamcast action. I mean, it's just a
I'll leave that to you. I played one game on Dreamcast, and when we get there, we'll talk about that.
Awesome.
So let's start off with what the best thing that this generation brought. I think it's generation 4 was PS1 and 64 Dreamcast, and then generation 5 was PS2, Xbox, GameCube. So what was the best thing that came with this generation of game, or these two generations?
I think the biggest thing is that this is when gaming stepped out of that only nerds play it. You only play in your room, on a small TV and, whatever. This actually moved, I think, more into the living room. I think it was more socially acceptable. Like when you would go and you would talk, I remember I got the PlayStation 1 for Christmas, and I had a couple of other buddies in school that got it. I think I was in 8th grade or 7th grade at the time. And that's what we talked about for like the whole week was, oh, what did you play in PlayStation? What game did you play? And what games did we
everyone
want
played
to
that demo disc that came with it.
Oh,
Metal
the
Gear
hell out of
Solid,
the demo
Cool
disc.
Borders,
Yes.
Medieval. It was a great demo.
Yes, absolutely. What was the other one? Oh, Jet Moto was the other one
Jet
too.
Moto, I love it. We'll talk when we get
Yeah.
to actually going into the games. I love Jet Moto, and there was a NFL Game Day, I believe it was called. The NFL one was Game Day, and the NCAA one was Game Breaker.
Yep.
From 989 Sports.
Yep. And I just remember. So I think that was the biggest one, is that more people were getting it was more getting noticed, and being, to see a console in somebody's living room was not a rarity anymore. And I think the second thing with that is we started to get into this, how are we going to online play? How are we going to, it's away from the split screen stuff and, jumping into this connected world. If it's via portable, or I know that, it's a little bit with the Xbox, the original Xbox needing the broadband connection. And not many people know this, but, PlayStation 2, actually, you could play online.
Yep, you had to get an adapter. When I was in college, I got the adapter and started playing online, and I would run through some people in NBA Live for PS2.
It was slower than shit, but...
Yeah, you kind of had to figure out how to play with the glitches that would come with bad connections.
But we started seeing this connectivity, and from there it was this is when like the message board started to pop up, and the chats and the forums, and people started to become more into this, connected. If it wasn't necessarily playing, it was talking about it online, and that's what I think that's what it did. So it kind of,
the video gaming podcast hadn't really started yet, though.
Correct. No,
we weren't quite there.
Not yet, but it was just to the point of, there was now a platform. There was now a stage that people could be on to start to voice out. It wasn't this, I have to go and find this cheat by myself, and I have to go and look through a magazine or be word of mouth. It was, I can go
hope one of my friends has found it and they tell me.
Correct. Now it's like, now I can go and I can Yahoo it. I can Bing it, or not Bing it because Bing wasn't there.
Nobody uses Bing. What I'm saying?
Yeah, nobody
uses
Alta
Vista.
But, so it was this, society of now of being able to be connected. And so I think that was what two big things that brought these two generations.
Yeah, absolutely. That's just like you said, the interconnection, and it became ubiquitous. Everybody had a video game. You thought everybody had a Nintendo, Super Nintendo, or Sega, but really everyone had an N64 or PlayStation. And that kind of brought out the beginning of console wars. It's like you either had an N64 or you had a play. I mean, some lucky kids had both, but for the most part, N64 kids, they were over here, and they talked about how great N64 was, and PlayStation kids were over on the other side talking about how great PlayStation is. And it's the same thing you get with like Samsung versus Apple now, or, basically any emerging technology. I mean, we were just having this conversation before we started recording about Apple versus, like, I've always used Samsung products and you use Apple products, and I said I can't use Apple, but it's not like, at this point, I'm not being an elitist. I've just been using Samsungs for 8 years and not going to change. My favorite thing about this generation was the emergence of the 3D graphics. And not just necessarily like open worldness, but like even something with a linear path like Crash Bandicoot, you just had so much depth in the game, and it gave you so much more to do within it, so much more to explore even on that linear path.
Absolutely.
Platformers became more challenging. Sports games looked more realistic. And then you really saw first-person shooters start to rise with PlayStation and N64, and then they kind of hit their stride on PS2, Xbox, and then PS3, Xbox 360 was when they hit like critical mass and just everything. If you weren't making a first-person shooter, you weren't doing something right.
And that's what I was going to say. That 360 and the PlayStation 3 version, or PlayStation 3 era, is like the era of FPSs.
Yeah.
Like everywhere you went, it was an open world game. 3 more FPSs came out.
Yep.
You know. So, I think one of the other things too is it's these big businesses started to get a hold, like want to get behind these games and wanted to get behind these console makers. There's another, I could drop another person's podcast, correct?
Yeah, go ahead.
Is that so there's this one podcast I listen to. It's called Business Wars, and I don't know if you've heard of it or not.
I have not.
And each season is a business, you know, it's like somebody versus somebody. So I think season 2, it's PlayStation or Sony versus Nintendo. Now, long story short, not many people realize this, but Nintendo was facing Sega. Okay, that was the big console war that was going on. Are you Sega or are you Nintendo?
Mm-hmm.
And then, so Sega decided to come out, and they came out with Sega CD. And Nintendo finally said, we want to look at this technology of a CD-based console. And what they did was they went to Sony, and Sony, or however it was, or Sony went to them, or
I think I've
whatever
heard
it was
this before, that Sony and Nintendo were working together on what would become the N64, basically.
Correct.
But they had a falling out at some point, and PlayStation 1 took most of the technology behind it with them.
Correct. And basically the way that they found out was literally days before they were supposed to announce, or it was on the day that they were supposed to announce the PlayStation, like the you know, the console that was together for Nintendo and Sony. And here they are, you know, basically holding their whatever's in their hand, like, what the hell do we do? And then Sony basically went out and and that's where the PlayStation was born. And they go through of how they first had to take down Sega, and they did that, and then they went after Nintendo. And it was it's such a good, if you want to hear some good history of how Sony and Nintendo started and how the PlayStation got started, it's a great series. And so basically what my point is with this is, when you did this, it's these big developers were like, this is what we want. We want something bigger. We want the better graphics. We want the 3D rendering. We want all of this. And it was, who's going to be the one to say, we're now going and jumping into a new era. And a lot of success from the PlayStation, you'll find, was because of, I would say stubbornness of Nintendo trying to think the old way of producing games was the correct way. So.
Right. When they both came out, like you said, it was just this split, and Sony started with Sega, and that wasn't a very, difficult thing to take down at that time. I don't know why the Dreamcast didn't do better. I think they just didn't come out with enough. I guess their library must not have been big enough. I didn't know many kids with a Dreamcast, and I knew a lot of kids with the Sega Genesis and even Sega CD and Sega Saturn. But then, like with the Dreamcast, it was like it was overlooked because Nintendo 64 was already out and PlayStation was on the way. So I think it was like it kind of fell in that middle that nobody wanted to dive into it. Either you already had an N64 or you were waiting for the PlayStation.
I will give my theory when we get to that point. But I think one of the other things too, and people don't see, like, everybody knows, if you listen to video games or if you watch it and I say E3, everybody knows what E3 is now.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. People didn't realize what E3 was back then and what the CES was and all of that, like what these conventions were. And I believe it was at CES and, or I believe it was E3. Sega comes out and they unveil the Sega Saturn. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And if you remember, it was Sega Saturn and it gets released today. You know, like there was no hype up. There was no like
Right.
readiness. And Sega never told anybody. Sega was just like, hey, it's being shipped to retailers today, you know, type sort of thing. And it was $399. It was $400. So it was already, and back then in the 90s, that's an expensive console. That's a
Right.
lot of
Yeah.
money for a console. Now, PlayStation gets up and is starting to talk about the PlayStation, and they say, oh, well, I forgot who it was. And they say, well, we're going to have him say a little bit about the PlayStation. Literally, he gets up on the podium and goes, $299 and walks off stage. Like, that's all it was. And
Yep,
people like
that'll
went
do it.
easy with it. So, I mean, the strategy was just to undercut Sony, or it's undercut Sega on the price, you know, and they did, and it worked. But I mean, if you want it, I mean, I can get into what my theory is of why the Dreamcast failed.
Yeah, let's hear it.
So
We've got nothing better to do here. We're talking about video games.
There you go. It's the rule of three. Okay.
Okay.
It is, the rule of three to me is that your third generation console is going to bomb. It's happened. So let's look at popularity. I'll take, Nintendo. Okay. Nintendo, you had the NES, and then you had the Super NES, and then you had the N64. Okay.
N64
now, the
did not bomb.
The N64 is not their top selling console.
Okay.
Okay. In fact, it suffered because it was cartridge based.
When everything was going to CD. Yeah, I could see that.
Everything was going to CD. So it was not necessarily said as a failure, but it was not necessarily put up as a success, as a rousing success. Okay.
And that other than the Wii U, that's probably their, I don't know. Would you say it's their worst selling? Then, like, the Wii U is probably absolutely worst selling, and then N64? In relative terms, obviously, there's going to be less
in
units,
relative terms,
you know, 20 years ago.
Yeah, in relative terms, I think they've replaced it with the Wii U, but I think that the 64 was not necessarily the console that they wanted to put out.
Right.
It was not something, once again, I think it was the stubbornness of it being old. I'm going to move on to Sega.
Mm-hmm.
You had the Sega Master System. Okay. And then you had the Sega Genesis. Okay. And then to me, the Sega Saturn was basically just an offshoot of the Genesis. Okay. Which still bombed.
Yeah, I didn't know. And I knew one different kid that had a Sega Saturn.
Now, what I will say is, I will take out the Sega Master System. Not a lot of people realize what the Sega Master System is. Okay? So, if you go by their first really good console, it was the Sega Genesis. Okay? That's the one that took on Nintendo. Okay? Sega Saturn, that was bad. That was really, really bad marketing that I think killed that. Okay? But people still bought it. The Dreamcast. The Dreamcast to me was their third console, their third major console. Nobody could program for it. It was so ahead of its time in graphic design, in architecture, and what people wanted to, what Sega thought people could do with it. People didn't know how to program for it.
I think I remember reading that at one point too.
Yep. Yeah, there was no going back from it. Like, there was just, you couldn't do it. And so nobody wanted to back it. Nobody wanted to program for this difficult, hard machine when you had the PlayStation 2 that was out, that was selling. It was one of the easiest consoles to program for. That's why it had so many games.
Yeah, PlayStation has always had the largest library out of all its competitors.
Mm-hmm. Now, I'll go on to Sony. Sony's third console, the PlayStation 3. Overpriced, they got overzealous, and they had an architecture that people didn't program for, the cell processor. That one bombed. Okay, so that's their third console.
I bought like 3 of them.
Uh-huh. The Xbox 360, okay? The Xbox One, third console. it's the rule of 3 to me, is that your third console is going to bomb.
All right, I'll buy that. It's as good as
Mm-hmm.
explanation of anything else that I've heard.
Mm-hmm.
That's interesting. I'll have to put more thought into that because that's interesting to come at it and to kind of look at the actual numbers behind it and see. Because like I said, I bought 3 PlayStation 3s, but that was just because they kept breaking and I wasn't going to switch to Xbox at that point in my life.
I bought
Go ahead.
I bought 4 for the sheer fact that I had one that I got that was an 80 gig. I had 2 of them that were the George Foreman looking ones,
Mm-hmm.
the originals. My first one was the 60
The
gig
one that had the backwards compatibility.
and I've never updated it. So
Good idea.
Which I don't know if it's right or wrong or whatever, but I know I can still put PlayStation 2 games in that system and I can still play those games. So I'm happy with that. So I have the original. I had an 80 gig and then that one ended up breaking and then I ended up getting 2 slims, for some reason.
Yeah, I had my first one. I got Red Ring of Death or Yellow Light of Death, whatever it is, on the PlayStation 3. I got that. I sent it in. They sent me a refurbished one that I had to pay another $150 for, even though like this wasn't my fault, but it was just outside of the warranty. It was out of the warranty by like 2 months, and it made me really mad. So I had to pay for the refurbished one, and then that got Yellow Light of Death probably 6 months later, and there is no warranty on a refurbished one, so then I had to buy a third one, which is still going strong to this day, and I still play NCAA 14 on it because can't play NCAA football games anymore.
No, you can't.
So, which systems did you own? I had, for these 2 generations, I had PlayStation 1, PlayStation 2. I was PlayStation through and through. I had roommates in college that had Xbox 360, and a roommate with a GameCube. But that was it as far as I had, just PlayStation 2. And that was all I ever needed. I didn't need a GameCube or N64 or anything like that. I was quite content.
So there was only one Sega console that I've ever owned, and that was the Sega Master System. So I've never had anything past the Sega Master System for Sega. Nintendo, I stopped after the Super Nintendo. Never owned a N64, never owned a GameCube. I did end up getting a Wii.
I got a Wii about like 5 years after they were cool, which was fine. Like I would play it sometimes.
My parents got the Wii. I didn't buy it. My parents bought it.
My parents had
And
one
they bought
too,
it-
and then my wife now, she was my girlfriend at the time, bought one for me for Christmas or something. And we played it a couple times because she likes playing like Mario Party, and like we would play the regular Super Mario game that they made for that. So we would play some things together, but we didn't use it a whole lot, and I ended up selling it. This was probably only like a year ago, and I got like $120 selling it online on eBay still, which was, I thought, way more than I would get for it because we probably only paid $150.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. So I had the PlayStations, and I had PlayStation 1, PlayStation 2, obviously PlayStation 3. So nothing really was interesting about those. I just got, I ended up just buying those, or I got those gifted to me. My first Xbox 360 is a very interesting story, or to what I think is interesting. So I worked with a guy who was a big Xbox guy,
Mm-hmm.
but he was I have no idea like what to do with him. What does that mean? And he calls me up one day and he says, Dan, now this is the 360. I'll tell you this. I was a Sony fanboy through and through. Okay. And so it was like, to me, like the 360 was, whatever. And, I would fight everybody, PlayStation's better. And
PlayStation better, yeah.
Yeah. And not many people realize this, but the PlayStation 3 actually outsold the Xbox 360. If you look at final results.
I believe that.
Yeah. So he calls me up and he says, I got these like 3 red lights. I'm like, oh, you got the red ring of death. Okay. I'm like, dude, you got to send it into Xbox. And he's like, I really don't want to send it into Xbox. He's like, how much is it to fix it? And I think back then it was like $150 to fix it or something.
Yeah, that's what it was for the PS3, so I'd assume it was around the same.
Yeah, something like that. And he goes, my wife saw another one, like I think the Slims were coming out, And they're like $200. He's like, what's this Slim about? Or whatever it was. And I'm like, well, it's just, a different version of it. And, you do what you want with it. He says, do you want it? And I'm like, well, how much do you want for it? And he said, nothing. It doesn't work. He's like, you would have to pay $150 to go and fix it. He goes, my wife ended up going out and buying, the other one. And so I got that one. And I'm like, oh, hell yeah, I'll take it. No problem. So he gave me it. I figured I'd just save up $150, get it fixed, and I got a 360. Awesome. I go over and I look at it, and on the back, I look at the manufacture date, and whatever I did, and I put in, in the whole thing to get it registered and all of that. Mm-hmm. This is when they were offering to fix the red ring for 3 years. He was at 2.5 years on his console.
Oh, nice. So you got a free console and then got it.
Well, that's the thing. He gave it to me, and then, I went back to him. I'm like, hey, Joe, you actually can send this in for free. It's all of that. And he goes, I already got a new one, dude. He says, keep it. I'm like, you sure you don't want any money for it? He says, no, just keep it. He says, if I found out that you got it for free and whatever, he goes, I'd be a little pissed at you. But the fact that you're telling me about it and you're willing to, because I brought it back to him.
Right.
He's like, the fact that you're going to bring it back to me. He says, no, that's stand up. He goes, you just keep it. And I said, awesome. So I ended up getting a 360 for free. So
yeah, that's a good score. And, that's the only way I would have ever, attained an Xbox at the time. I'm the same way as PlayStation fanboy, and I just found it better, more playable. Especially with first generation Xbox versus PlayStation 2, those first generation Xbox controllers were so big. And I have big hands anyways, so it's not like they didn't fit, but like just going from like a Nintendo or a regular PlayStation controller, even the N64, which had a bigger controller, but the way you held it didn't make it feel that big. Going to that Xbox one that felt like you were holding a Nintendo Switch in your hand, basically. Like, it was the weirdest thing, and I couldn't do it. Like, I'd go to a friend's house and try and play Halo, and it's like, I can't even, where do my fingers go? I can't reach the buttons. It was too much.
Yeah, absolutely. And then, well, that they re-released a couple months ago, over the summer, I believe it was, that like a modified version of the original Xbox controller with the green thing in the middle for the Xbox One. And my buddy got it. I'm like, why?
Why would you do that to yourself?
Why would you do that?
He's
like, it's the best controller in the world. I'm like, no, it's not. That's why they got.
If you're Andre the Giant, it is maybe, but for everybody else, all us normal people down here, no, it's terrible.
Yes.
That was the selling point on like the Xbox 360 is they were like, trust us, this controller fits in your hands now, so you'll be good. You can buy this one.
So.
Yeah, like I couldn't do it with that one, and then the GameCube controller was even weirder. But
I don't even start on the GameCube controller. That was such an ugly design that had there was no form to it.
It was like people complained about like having to hold the middle section of the N64 controller.
Huh?
But instead of just putting the analog sticks where like PlayStation would or even Xbox would in a normal place where you can reach them, they still try to put it right in the middle of the controller, but there wasn't that middle section to hold on to, so you had to like reach your thumb as far as I didn't play much GameCube. My roommate in college had one, and we would play Mario Soccer on it, and that was about it that we played on it. But yeah, it was just awkward and weird. PlayStation has always by far had the best controllers.
To me, I agree, and that's not just a Sony fanboy speaking. Just the way it forms to your hand, I think it's always been good. In fact, I think the best controller that's ever been made is the PlayStation 4 controller. I think they finally got everything correct with it.
I could do without the touchpad in the middle that doesn't do anything in most games. I mean, it's your pause button for the most part, but like, I could do without that, but it also doesn't take away from the function of the rest of the controller.
Correct.
And that's the thing that PlayStation did well, is you can pick up a PlayStation 1, PlayStation 2 controller right after holding the PlayStation 4 controller, and it takes a little bit to kind of get used to it because it's lighter, but it's the size and shape is mostly the same. Xbox has gone through wild changes with each generation of controller. Nintendo has gone everywhere imaginable with their controllers. And, like, you can't, the NES to SNES is fine, and then N64 is something completely different, and then you go to GameCube, which is trying to be the same, but not even close to the same, and then you've got the Wii, which is just a stick, and with the nunchuck, which I always found weird, and then the Wii U, where it's just a tablet, and now the Switch, which varies.
Did you find? Sorry, go ahead. Did you find yourself with the nunchuck, like, being off, like, when you tried to move? Because, like, it was your left hand wasn't stable, or your right hand wasn't stable enough?
Sometimes. I didn't use it that much, because a lot of games you didn't need it for. Like, I played a lot of Mario Kart, which you don't need it. I think, like, we'd play Mario Party, which you needed it sometimes, depending on what, like, minigame you got chosen for. And then, like, the Wii Sports Boxing, I think, might have been the only other game that I ever played with the nunchuck. So I didn't get too deep into Wii games, ever.
I always felt like I would punch somebody. Like, if somebody was next to me, and I had the nunchuck, like, I don't know what it was, but, like, when I tried to use it,
motion controlling it, even though it didn't do anything.
Exactly. And it's like, anybody to my left, it's like, watch out, because Dan's swinging, you know? So.
Yeah, I can see that, because it's almost like playing a racing game where you're leaning into the turns and everything, just because it feels natural.
That real. Yep.
Yeah. So let's get into talking system by system, going over some of our favorite games like we've done on the other ones. So if you want to hear our favorite arcade games, Nintendo, Super Nintendo, Sega games, go back and listen to parts 1 and 2. Let's start with N64, the first of this generation. I've got 4 games listed, so we can go 4 or 5, whatever.
I only have 2.
Okay. So I'll
like
have
I said,
more,
I didn't own it, so it was only what I was able to see my friends play.
Right.
So my first one was the Mario game, the original Mario game that it came with it, I believe, Mario 64. It was great. It was the way the camera was, and you know, walking around, finally making it a 3D world for Mario, I thought was great.
Yeah, it was a really cool and deep game. Have you played it recently?
No.
It's very clunky. I played it probably within the last 6 months, and, like, it's still fun because, like, of the nostalgia factor behind it, but, like, it's super hard to get around in that 3D world just because of how far 3D worlds have come. Like, trying to get around in that 3D world is very difficult. And, like, timing all your jumps right and getting and landing on the spot where you need to land. When you're actually in the levels, it's not quite as bad, but, like, getting in between the levels is kind of difficult. And then once you fall in the water, it's all over from there. At least for me it is. But I do remember, I have fond memories of going to friend's house when the N64 had first come out and playing that game all day, because that's where PlayStation came with the demo disc where you had your 12 games that you could play one level of. N64 came with Super Mario 64, and that's all anybody had for the first 6 months of having the console, so that's what everybody played all the time.
Basically, yes. So, why don't you go through your next 2, and then I'll get my last.
That'll work. This, to me, is other than the arcade version, which we talked about, this is the best version of NFL Blitz, was NFL Blitz 2000 for N64. I don't have a lot of data to back that up, but just, like, that's the one that I'll go back and play. I've had it on PlayStation 3. I have it on a stand-up arcade in my room. I have it, you know, on every other console, but, like, I'll always go back and play the N64 version because I liked the team selection there and, like, the players you got to play with. You still had all of the violence that NFL Blitz is known for. Like the PlayStation 3 version that came out in, I want to say 2008, 2009, like you could hit after the whistle, but just barely. Like, you could, like, do a diving tackle and, like, they would tackle normal almost. It wasn't, you couldn't just pile on over and over and over again until play selection came up. So to me, this was always the best version of NFL Blitz. And, like I said, I still go back to that over and over again. And then another one I really liked was Road Rash 64, which was
Mm-hmm.
I guess it's a racing game, but you're on like a motorcycle and you pick up weapons throughout
Yep.
throughout your time, and you just can kind of beat the violence of it all is what drew me to it, and you can beat the hell out of everybody racing against you, and that's another one that I've gone back to recently, and it's really very challenging to win those races. Usually, if I go back to racing games from like my PlayStation 2 days, it's pretty easy to beat the computer, but this one is
Mm-hmm.
kind of hard with all the power-ups and everything because the other people also get those power-ups and try and beat the hell out of you.
Hmm. I can tell you that I've played both of those. And yeah, I could see it. I remember Blitz. I got Blitz for the PlayStation, and I know exactly what you're talking about because me and my buddies would play it, and it was, how many times can we hit each other before the play was called? It was really, really, really short time after the play. So, yeah. And then, so my last one, which I'm putting money on it that this is your last one too, is, GoldenEye.
Yes.
And that was just because of, of it being GoldenEye and how they made it and the online part of it and just all of that, or not the online, but,
The multiplayer.
The multiplayer that they had for it was just incredible. The only thing I can't remember her name for the life of me, but the chick that used to keep walking in front of you when you would shoot.
I never played the story mode. I exclusively played multiplayer, and I never noticed that.
Yeah,
Or I don't remember noticing, at least.
In the game, there would be times that you would be doing a mission and she would just stand like right in front of you when you're trying to shoot. And it's like, get the hell out of the way. So
that's not helpful. I'm not trying to shoot you. I'm trying to shoot the Russians.
Yeah, there was a what is it? When I was doing the radio show, I think I talked about this before in one of the past episodes. I was on the radio and I had a video game show and we had a list of the most annoying non-playable characters, and she was like number 4. So
I could see that.
So
who was number 1 on that list?
God, it was so long ago. It was. What's the one, the Nintendo game where you are just a person in a village and you're just, oh God, I can't remember.
Pokemon?
No.
I don't have an answer.
You just do odd tasks. Like you could be a farmer or you could be a fisherman or.
Yeah, I don't know the name of it. I've never played it, but I know what you're talking about.
There's one guy there's just one little fat guy. I've never played it. But there's just like one little fat guy that just would just keep going on and on and on and on and on and on. Like the texts were just so long and there was like no way to skip it. But you had to talk to him all the time.
Unskippable cutscenes is bad news.
Yeah.
Especially when it's all text-based.
God, that is going to drive me nuts now that I can't figure.
We'll go back through the archives of the radio show and find it.
Yeah. Yeah, sure. No problem.
You got it all on tape somewhere, right?
Yeah, somewhere in there. God, see, that would be, let's see. I have been away from the radio show, the radio station for, let's see. I'm trying to think. I'm trying to do the math really fast in my head, and now that I'm on the spot, God, that had to be at least 12 years ago.
Wow. Okay. Yeah, they probably got it somewhere, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, so GoldenEye was my last one. Again, for the multiplayer alone, like, just, there was nothing better than getting together with a group of friends. I would go, we'd go to, like, church youth group, or I would go with my friends, and so my friend was in my grade, and then he had 2 younger brothers, and I would go over there, and we would play GoldenEye and Smash Brothers. Like, we'd go after school till the youth group started, like, 6:30 or whatever, and the whole time it was just GoldenEye and Smash Brothers, back and forth. And, like, the 4 of us, I was terrible at both of them and would get my ass kicked every time. And even, like, his youngest brother was, I don't know, probably 8, and I was 12, 13 years old. But it didn't matter. Those 2 games were just endlessly playable and enjoyable. I'm still not very good at Smash Brothers, and I'll go back and play it. And I'm excited in a month when Smash Brothers for Switch comes out. I've already got it pre-ordered. I'm ready to go on it. And
So in other words, you got to give me your friend code so we can face each other.
There we go. We can do that. You're gonna kick my ass because I go straight Captain Falcon, and he hasn't been good since the first game. So.
Okay.
I don't know. This lineup on this new one's supposed to be huge, so I'll probably find a new fighter.
I think honestly, I just found the article. And it was Natalia was the girl from Goldeneye.
Oh, okay. Yep. That sounds familiar.
And then let's see, that's it. Mr. Rossetti from Animal Crossing.
Animal Crossing.
Yep. That's what it is. So Animal Crossing, and it's Mr. Rossetti.
Okay.
From Animal Crossing.
Stay away from him, everyone.
Yes. I can't believe I actually found the article.
Good job. Yeah, so I'm in the same boat as you. I didn't own an N64. Those were my 4 go-to games at friend's house, though. We'd one-off play like 1080 snowboarding or Madden or something like that, but for the most part, it was Super Smash Brothers and GoldenEye, and then every once in a while we'd get an NFL Blitz, and then at a different friend's house I'd play this Road Rash game. And I don't even think he had it. I think we rented it one time, and he had a Game Shark, so we unlocked all the weapons right away, which is always, having that Game Shark in those days was key.
Absolutely, it was.
So PlayStation. I've got like 20 games that I could go through. I think I narrowed it down to 5, but I'll let you go first.
My first one of all time, just my favorite PlayStation 1 game of all time is Final Fantasy VII. And I know that people are going to be like, well, no shit, and blah, 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 blah. It is.
I've never played it, but that's what I've seen everywhere, is it's supposed to be the best RPG pretty much ever.
It is the epitome of such a great RPG story, character building. It was just so good. I just enjoy it. I enjoy everything about it.
All right, we'll allow that here. I've never gotten into RPGs. To me, they're too boring. Like, if I'm fighting somebody, I want to be fighting. I don't want to push the button and then watch the action happen. Like, I'd much rather actually do the fighting. But that's what I've heard over and over again, is Final Fantasy VII is the best ever, and everybody's just waiting for a remaster that's never coming.
Oh no, it is. It's coming. It's announced. It's in development.
Well, that's good. All right. We'll see it when it gets here.
Yeah.
So
I'll talk to you in 12 years when it gets released.
On the PlayStation 15.
Yeah.
My number one PlayStation 1 game, and I'm going to get shit for this because I've read on several lists how terrible of a game it is.
Okay.
Star Wars Jedi Power Battles. From episode 1, I loved this game. And I still do. I'll still play it, and I can see why it ends up at the top of terrible games lists, but it's great.
I don't even know if I can finish the podcast with you right now.
It's not that bad. To me, it has the best lightsaber. Well, I mean, The Force Unleashed does good at lightsabering as well, I guess. But for the time, there was no other game where you could do the combos and things you could with a lightsaber. You can play with 9 different characters, I think, maybe 10.
I think it was 10.
If you unlock everyone, and then there's 2 bonus levels. You can swing your lightsaber tirelessly at Jar Jar Binks, which is always good. I just really like it.
And calling it, and this could be for a whole nother episode, but Jar Jar is a Sith Lord. I'm throwing that out there.
Yeah, Darth Jar Jar. I've seen that. I wouldn't mind that.
No.
I think so. We'll take a quick Star Wars tangent. The Star Wars fan base is a bit toxic, and before Episode 7 came out, there was a lot of talk around Darth Jar Jar, and everybody was so hyped for it, but really knew in the back of their minds that it wasn't going to happen.
Uh-huh.
I think like after something like The Last Jedi came out, and I don't want to like whatever your thoughts are on that, I don't want to get into it because I don't want to have a Last Jedi argument. But I feel like how everyone reacted to The Last Jedi, if Darth Jar Jar came true now, there would be this huge uproar of you can't do that to Jar Jar Binks' character. Like, how can you do that? He was always in the Senate. He was always on Amidala's side. And like, I just feel like somehow there would be this faction of the fan base who would be against that decision when it would be the only thing you could ever possibly do with Jar Jar Binks' character in the future.
I can agree with that. So I haven't seen the last movie yet.
Okay.
So
I really like it.
I've only seen episode 7. Cause didn't they release episode 8? Or no?
Episode 8 was last year.
Yes, I haven't seen episode 8 yet.
Yeah, that's The Last Jedi. And that's the one that caused all the toxic fandom. And I really like it. So I didn't want to, if you were on the other side of that, I didn't want to start an argument because it's an argument that's never going to go anywhere. But
correct.
to me, it was enjoyable. I don't care that there's women and minorities doing good things in a Star Wars movie, or in any movie really. So some of the major complaints don't really bother me.
Yeah, I think I know I saw a couple of those complaints, and to me it's like, you know what, we and I'm not going to, believe me, I am not going to get political or whatever with it, but we live in a world right now that we should accept people for who they are, because we are finally out of the 2,000 years from civilization, or 3,000 years, or however long the fuck we've been here. Mm-hmm. Is let's start accepting people for who they are and how they feel that they want to be. Yeah. And stop looking at the physicality or the physicality of people. I mean,
a person is a person. It doesn't matter. Like nothing else
really
matters.
Yeah.
If you're going to dislike a person, dislike them for who or what they are. And if you're going to like a person, dislike or like them for who or what they are, not what they look like or where they're from or anything like that.
Exactly. I mean, it is such a stupid. To me, that's the only way I can put it. It is such a stupid argument to talk about people. It's because this is how this has always been, so we can't have a minority or we can't have a woman doing this, or we can't have that. It's like that. That's bullshit. That's all that is. That is bullshit.
Well, I was thinking about this the other day, with all this push for women-led movies like Ocean's 8 and the new Ghostbusters and things like that. And those movies are bad, and they're objectively bad. They're not bad because women are leading them.
Yes.
But one thing that makes, and then I just watched Annihilation, that came out this year. Have you seen that? With Natalie Portman?
Yes, I have.
Okay. So Annihilation has a mostly female cast. There's like 2 men in it, and they're barely in it. The thing that Annihilation does that other movies that are presented as these are women doing things movies, Annihilation never pays any attention to that. These are all women going on this expedition. I'm not going to spoil it for anyone who hasn't seen it, but it's 5 women going on the expedition into this place. I didn't even really notice it until halfway through the movie. I went, oh, hey, there's no men there. And it didn't hurt or help my enjoyment of it. I was like, oh, that's interesting.
And that just kind of proves my point of what I was just, saying before of looking at, is that I don't want to look at something and say, oh, these women, because they're women, did a great job in this movie because, if there was men doing it, they could have done a better job. So now you're trying to pit them between, oh, a man can do this better than a woman, stuff. It's like, no, what happened was these actresses put on an incredible movie that I enjoyed. And
I didn't enjoy it, but it has nothing to do with the women.
Yeah. Or you know what I'm saying.
Yeah.
It's I didn't like the movie because of X, Y, and Z, not because it was women leading roles. I mean, it's just, I mean, like I said, it's just, we live in such a society right now that can be so toxic in a matter of seconds because of instantaneous pictures, instantaneous videos, and all of that can just be so toxic. And it's just, there's so much work and effort going into trying to piss people off
Mm-hmm.
why can't we use that effort to just pick each other up?
Yeah, I completely agree.
That's my little political public statement of the night.
I'm good with that. When you can bring that statement onto a podcast about something anytime you want. And so the only other point I was going to make is Annihilation never brought up that these were all women, but like Ghostbusters and Ocean's 8, that's all they talk about through the whole movie is we're women, we can do this. So they're bringing the attention to it and making it and making the movie say, look at these women can do the same thing as men when that's not supposed to be the point of the movie. The point of the movie is just supposed to be enjoyable on its own merits. And they're not because they're bad movies, but like Ocean's 8, and I can see why people would like Annihilation. I didn't personally like it. But like with Ocean's 8 and Ghostbusters, nobody liked them because they were just bad movies, and their only selling point was look at these women doing what men did in the past.
Exactly. So.
All right, so Jedi Power Battles, the best game ever, Jedi Power Battles. I can't believe you guys don't like that. I can actually, I've played it recently, and I can really see why. Like, the controls are pretty clunky. The blocking of lasers and stuff with the lightsaber doesn't really work. I got more rage filled the last time I played it than probably the first 3 years I ever played that game.
Mm-hmm.
Because now I know better. I know how mechanics in games can be so much better. Back then I didn't. So it was just like, oh, this is fun. I get to be Obi-Wan Kenobi and Qui-Gon, and if you beat it with Qui-Gon, you get to be Darth Maul. That's so awesome. And now I see it as, well, I hit the block button. Why isn't it blocking? Block.
Block. Yeah. Exactly.
All right, your next game.
Let's see. My next game. I don't know if I can put this into whatever. My next game I'm just going to say is Metal Gear Solid.
Okay. For some reason when you said Metal Gear Solid, my mind went to Twisted Metal, and I was like, I know that's not what he's talking about.
No.
I know what Metal Gear Solid is.
In fact, I will say this: nowhere on my list is Twisted Metal. I was never a fan of Twisted Metal.
It was it was fun to play like for 6 minutes at a time.
Yeah, and then I'm like, okay, I'm done.
Yeah.
Metal Gear Solid. What that did for me was that took I have to step back and I have to really think about what I want to do in this video game.
Mm-hmm.
And it was, even though it's not long per se, it felt long. It felt big for that time. Because remember, this was really the first successful CD-based console. And so the games were able to be bigger in scale, taller, non-platform, 3D. And so to me, it felt the game was a long game, and it wasn't. It really wasn't. But it was a long game, and it told a story of, and I've always loved espionage stories. I will listen to books when I drive home, and I'll listen to Tom Clancy books. So Metal Gear right then and there is just right up my alley with espionage and all of that. And then from there, it pushed the boundary of games are not going to be this ho-hum nice game anymore. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
There was blood. I don't think there was any swearing in it, but there was these people are actually really mean to each other. You don't know who to trust. It was the first mature game I think I owned. Mature rated game I owned. And it was just, it was just so good. Just so good. So stealthy and all of that. And then the little things, like the little stupid shit things that they put on there, of like, how do you find Meryl's Kodak? Well, it's on the back of the box. Like they made you actually like look at things, you know? Like there was one of the bosses, Psycho Mantis. He knew exactly what you were doing. Like if you tried to shoot him, um, you tried to shoot him, he'd move out of the way. There was no way to hit him. And then he would like read things from like your memory card. Like if you played Jet
Oh
Moto,
yeah,
like,
I've heard of that.
yeah, like
I never
see
played
like to play.
Metal Gear other than like the one level that came on the demo disc, and then that like I played the hell out of that though,
Yep.
and just saw how many people I could hide or how long I could hide in the box before the game would run out, or like I had even just in that one level on a demo disc, it was just like you're saying so deep that I had hours and hours of enjoyment out of one level on a demo disc. And it
Uh-huh.
wasn't just doing that, like, there was, I think Crash Bandicoot 2 was on that demo disc too, just one level. And, like, that I could play over and over again, but it was just that one level and it was the same thing every time. You'd play that Metal Gear Solid, level and you could do completely different things every single time.
Oh, I used to remember when you would get up and then you had to like make your way to the elevator.
Mm-hmm.
I would play around with just flipping the guy and knocking him unconscious how many times until I got caught.
Right. Yep.
You know,
I remember that.
just all of that. So yeah, you know, needing, like I said, going back to Psycho Mantis, needing to actually take the controller out and plug it into the second port so you could actually beat him. You know, I mean, it's just like, just little things like that just made you, like, it opened up gaming to me. Metal Gear Solid was just one of those, like epiphany moment games for me.
Yeah, I could see that. My next one, I've got a couple series because they all just kind of lump together for me. Is the Cool Borders snowboarding series.
Mm-hmm.
That was the first time I had played and enjoyed a snowboarding game because I'd played 1080 on my friend's N64 before and like just couldn't get the controls right. But with Cool Borders, they kind of, especially Cool Borders 1 and 2, they dumbed down the controls, so it was pretty easy to pick up and get going. And then by the time 3 and 4 rolled around, you were already used to the control scheme, so it was a lot easier. And they had all these different mountains and characters, and like there was a lot of, I'm always a sucker for games with deep customization. So like you could get different boards, different characters, different outfits on the characters, you can go to all the different mountains, and it was a pretty good campaign playthrough as well. On like 2 and 3 I think were my favorites. And so this was, I moved from Florida to upstate New York so it was in 2000. So I had my PlayStation for probably 3 years at that point. And we moved up there and like I wanted to take up snowboarding because I had played these games and I did and I loved snowboarding and still do. I live in Florida again now, so I don't have anywhere to go snowboarding.
Okay.
But just that game made me fall in love with snowboarding, and then I actually got to go snowboarding and try and do the things that I learned in that game. And so anytime there's a new snowboarding game, I try it out because those are one of the best types of games, I think, because it's open world, you can do whatever you want and kind of be wherever you want. I played Steep on PS4. I actually think I traded it in not that long ago because I just didn't play it, and it's supposed to eventually come out on Switch, which I'll play it more, I think, on a Switch if it comes out. I just didn't have time to dedicate to it and relearn the controls every time I did pick it up.
Okay.
So, yeah, Cool Borders. Good stuff.
Yep. My next one, and so you mentioned Final Fantasy Remake and Remastered or whatever, and you know, I know that PlayStation announced it and people went crazy, but there is one game that I would love to see a remaster, or I would love to see a new game with it on the new consoles because I think it would look incredible. And my number 3 one is Legacy of Kain Soul Reaver.
Oh, I liked that game. That was on the demo disc too. I don't think I ever played through it full, but I loved that on the demo disc.
Yeah. I mean, it's just
that. Yeah.
I could talk another 4 hours about Legacy of Kain. It's just,
and that game was so hard because exactly what you're saying. If it had a remaster where you could actually see things, it would be so much fun because it was so hard to see in that game. I remember.
Yes.
I
Yes, it was
forgot that
so
game
hard
even
to see.
existed.
But it's just the legacy of Kane. I mean, from Blood Omen, Soul Reaver 2, Blood Omen 2. I mean, it just Defiance. Um, just to me, it's just they were just great games. They're just absolutely great games. But if I had to pick one out of there, I'm going with the original Soul Reaver. And it's just I played the hell out of it. I loved it, and just
That was
I want to
another
play it again.
one. Every time I'd pick it up on the demo disc, I would learn something new about the game, like a new power you could use or a new place you could go. Like it had all these little hidden secrets.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that was. I'm gonna have to. Damn it! You're making me look it up on Amazon now. I gotta buy it. My next one is another series that we talked about a little bit already. Is the Jet Moto series. Mostly 2 and 3. I don't know that I've ever played the first Jet Moto game. But I picked up Jet Moto 2. That game is so cool with the hover bikes they're basically jet skis, but they can go on any type. And that's another one. It's a racing game, and there's a lot of secrets and shortcuts, and you can do a lot of customization between characters and bikes and things like that. And then with Jet Moto 3, it came with the grapple function where you could hit the triggers and like swing around corners, which was really cool. And then it had 2 trick courses that I would spend hours in just trying to get the high score in the trick course, or there was like one special coin that you could get that was in the most impossible place to get, and I would spend hours trying to get that coin, and I think I
Yep.
got them in both levels. But I never did it while like setting a high score, so I was like trying to set a high score and get the special coin, and I never could do them at the same time.
I played 1 and 2, and to me 2 is the best one. You know what? I even played a little bit of 3, and I still think 2 is the best one out of all of them.
I would buy that. I would agree that I think 2 is better than 3. But I liked the new functionality that came with 3, but I think like the courses and the riders in 2 are better.
Really? Okay.
I was
And
agreeing with you.
just so you know, while we're looking at this, you can actually buy for
PlayStation 2
$7.
version.
For
Oh, it's
$7 right now, you can play Soul Reaver off of Steam.
Okay. Good to know. Oh, Dreamcast version.
Yep, Dreamcast version.
Oh, and there's an action figure for $120. I don't think I'll be buying that.
So I wonder if they sell the whole bundle. Okay, never mind. Sorry. My my next game, I have to say, and I just had my list. Where did I put my list? Calvin, you made me get rid of my list.
I'm sorry. But we know we can play Legacy of Kain Soul Reaver now.
Absolutely. My next one is Final Fantasy IX.
Okay.
Now, I know I'm picking these longer story games, especially Final Fantasy. Back then,
That's what you needed out of a game then, though. You need a long story.
What is it? My father was a computer programmer, and long story short, he ended up losing his job. So I would help out, and my parents, and I had 2 younger brothers and I had an older sister. My father, money was tight. And, with it being tight, when I was able to get a game, I wanted to get a game that was going to last me a while. So this is how I kind of got into RPGs and into longer games and all of that. So, and Final Fantasy IX was like right there. I fell in love with 7. Another one, and without spoiling, I fell in love with 8. And I'm like, okay, 9's coming out. I want to save up for it. I want to get it. And I ended up getting it. I ended up picking it up on my lunch break at my first job, or my second job. I ended up going and picking it up at the GameStop, and I remember reading the book from the front to the back about 4 times while I was finishing up the last part of my shift. And then I went home and played it.
That's a good story behind a gaming series, and why you found it and enjoyed playing it. Because that's what's interesting about games is how you find, like, with me with Jedi Power Battles, like that was my first Star Wars game I played, so like it always kind of just holds a special place, even though it's an objectively terrible game. It's still one of my favorites, and I'll still play it.
Exactly.
Plus, you get to play with Jedi Power Battles. You get to play the last level where they play Duel of the Fates throughout the whole thing, which is one of the best Star Wars songs ever.
Leia, like I know people give shit on Final Fantasy VIII because of the Guardian Forces and then the story and how it ends and where everybody was with it. But you know what? I enjoyed it because I would go over and I knew it was 4 discs, and I knew that for the next 40, 60 hours of a game, I'm playing.
Yeah.
You know?
That's like we said, at that time, that's what you needed out of a game, because you couldn't always have a new game, and you wanted something that was deep enough to play over and over again, or at least to keep your interest for more than 2 hours.
Correct.
My next one is the Spider-Man and Spider-Man 2 games for PlayStation 1.
Okay.
They were like a little bit open world, but not quite. And you could, like, it had a linear story. There were a lot of the Spider-Man villains. Like, you give me a Spider-Man game, I'm there any day of the week. Had a lot of the different Spider-Man villains to come across. You had, kind of, like I said, a little bit of open world swinging around. You had a couple different powers. And then, like we were talking about with, PS4 Spider-Man, a lot of different suits to choose from. I, of course, looked up the cheat codes, unlocked all the suits right away, so I could switch between them as I went. But those are still, like, going back to those are better than some of the more recent Spider-Man games, in my view. Like, the Amazing Spider-Man 2 games that came out for PlayStation 2 or PlayStation 4 are just garbage. So I would rather play these Spider-Man games from PlayStation 1 than either of those games again.
Okay. My turn, right?
Yes.
I am going to go with Oddworld Apes Odyssey.
I think I've played that.
You're just a funny alien dude.
Yeah.
And just, I mean, it was a great platformer. I mean, it wasn't groundbreaking, it wasn't anything like that. It was just a great platformer.
No, we talked about that in the beginning of, like, this was when platformers really found themselves, because with the 3D worlds, you could do so much more in the third dimension. You could do so much more with your character. And
Correct.
My last one that I wanted to talk about was the Crash Bandicoot series, which is one of my favorites, and I go back to it over and over again. And basically, anytime it was released in the PlayStation Store on PS3, I bought it and played through all 3 of them. I bought it on PlayStation 4 and played through it on that. Got it. I've got the PlayStation 1 disc that I play in my PlayStation 2 still. I haven't bought the Insane Trilogy because I feel like I already have it in so many different formats that I don't need just a better looking one. And I think it would throw me off to play the remastered one. But, like, I could go back to Crash over and over again. Even Crash Team Racing was a fantastic kart racer. It's not Mario Kart, but I will ride for Crash Team Racing forever.
There you go.
Did you have one more?
No, I think
that was all of them.
No, that's good. Yep.
Okay. So, you got anything on Dreamcast? Any games?
I have one game on Dreamcast.
I have no games on Dreamcast. The only game I ever played on Dreamcast was the Sonic game, and I hated it and never touched a Dreamcast again after I played it that one time.
Really?
Yep.
My brother ended up buying a Dreamcast for himself, so when I got to play it, it was very rare. Until he lost interest in it and basically gave it to me. And that was Shenmue, or however you say it.
Yeah, I've heard that's good. But yeah. Again, never made it past the terrible Sonic game.
Yep. So, nope, that's it. That was my only game I basically played on Dreamcast.
Yep, that's the I think the general consensus with Dreamcast is, like, everybody's played one game and that's it.
Yep.
So, we just made a split-second decision that we are going to cut this off here and roll over into a part 4 sometime in the future. We haven't decided that yet, But this one is already over an hour, and we could probably talk about PlayStation 2 and Xbox and GameCube for a whole nother hour. So we're going to come back to that later. So just want to say, Dan, again, thank you for the first 3 parts, and I'm looking forward to doing part 4 whenever we get to that one.
Hey, I once again, I appreciate you having me, and I cannot wait for part 4. And if I can shamelessly plug again, check out the Save Point podcast. And Kelvin, I said this, now 3 times, and maybe we'll do it for a 4th time. I need you to get onto ours at some point and record with us, on the other end. And we'll set up a time for us to do that. But,
yeah, I'm there. Whenever we can get to it, I'm there.
Awesome. But, check us out. Like I said, the Save Point podcast. We release usually right around every Saturday or Sunday we release a new episode. So check us out.
Yeah, I gotta go back and check out the Spider-Man pods he did, because I've slipped a little bit in my keeping up with things lately.
No problem.
It's like I have a life and kids to take care of or something. It's rough.
Yeah, I mean, those kids and that wife, I mean, it's like, when are they going to realize that we want to play games?
We want to play games and we want to listen to podcasts about games.
Yes.
That's it.
So.
All right. Thanks again, Dan.
No problem. Thank you.
Hey, this is an ad about something. Audible, to be exact. Audible is a great way to catch up on all your favorite stories while on the go. Audible includes an unmatched selection of audiobooks, original audio shows, news, comedy, and more from the leading audiobook publishers. I've been using Audible for years on my daily commute to catch up on some of my favorite fantasy stories, including Harry Potter, The Once and Future King, and A Song of Ice and Fire, narrated by the Guinness World Record holder Roy Dotrice. I also love getting Audible's recommendations. Just recently, Audible recommended that I read Armada and Ready Player One by Ernest Cline, and Spectacularly narrated by Will Wheaton. I listened to both of these stories and loved them both because the narration by Will Wheaton just made the stories even more enjoyable and immersive than if I would have read them on my own. So if you love books, I've got some great news for you. Right now, for my listeners, you can get any audiobook you want from Audible for free when you sign up for your free trial of Audible using audibletrial.com/a-podcast-about-something. Again, to download your free audiobook today, go to audibletrial.com/a-podcast-about-something. Thanks for listening. And now it's time for the 2-minute ISO. But first, listen to this promo from one of my fellow podcasters.
My name is Jennifer Fink, and I have a mom with early onset Alzheimer's. Since you're listening, we're probably in the same boat. I created this podcast for caregivers and people who are dealing with every stage of dementia. You see, I'm not just the daughter of an Alzheimer's patient, I'm the granddaughter and great-granddaughter of women who suffered from this terrible disease. Not a great family history, and one that I don't like having, especially when I forget where I was going in a conversation, or can't find my keys, or... what was I saying? I created Fading Memories because I couldn't find the information I needed to help me care for my mom. A lot of the information I found was basic or technical or required a lot of time to research. Some of the information was honestly a little wacky and unproven. So I talked to experts and people like us because acquiring and sharing this knowledge is important. There are so many of us caring for a loved one with memory loss, and our numbers are increasing rapidly. Until there is a prevention or a cure, maybe this podcast can be your next best resource. So subscribe to Fading Memories wherever you enjoy getting your podcasts, and we'll go on this journey together. Fading Memories is sponsored by Delta Ranches and Homes Property Management. When it's time to move your loved one out of their home, call Delta Ranches and Homes Property Management and let them handle getting you a rental income quickly. Delta Ranches and Homes, 925-550-8479.
I saw the Fantastic Beasts: Crimes of Grindelwald last weekend. I don't really have enough thoughts for a whole podcast on it, so I just was going to throw it on the end here for my 2-minute ISO today. I actually really enjoyed the movie. I rewatched the first one a couple days before I went, and the first one seemed like kind of a mess. Crimes of Grindelwald seemed to tell a more cohesive story, and it seemed like Where to Find Them, it told two separate stories that it eventually came together, but the stories were so disparate that it almost didn't make sense when they came together, and it was just like, I like Newt with the beasts and everything, but like I didn't care about it because it seemed like Percival Graves and Credence and Grindelwald was the important part of the movie, and Newt and his beasts were just kind of tacked on, which, like, Newt's a great character and he's a good main character to follow in this. I like him, I like Jacob, I like Tina. I don't really like Queenie. She just gets on my nerves. It's that stereotypical Roaring Twenties woman voice, I think, that bothers me. But other than that, I mean, the character of it's fine. This one, it didn't take as much time. Crimes of Grindelwald didn't take as much time to revel in the beasts as Where to Find Them did. Obviously, that one was supposed to be geared more towards the beasts. This one was more straight, like, let's see what Grindelwald's up to, let's see what Credence is up to, and, we'll throw in some beasts. It did, like, one full scene. There are going to be spoilers. I don't think I've spoiled anything yet, but there will be spoilers through this 2-minute ISO because I have a lot to talk about some of the reveals. So yeah, there was a little bit on the beasts, which was cool. I do really like learning about different magical creatures and things like that, but again, it's not why I go to see the movie. What really struck me in this one is how powerful all of the magic people are, or all the wizards and witches are. Like in Harry Potter, the original movies and book series, the main characters are still learning how to use and control their magic. Here, everyone has mastered it to the point that they want to. You've got Oars out on the trail. You've got Newt, who has figured out how to deal with these all the different magical creatures. You've got Grindelwald, who's just far and away better at magic than everyone else other than Dumbledore. You've got Dumbledore. Just everybody's like just so powerful with their magic, and I really like how you get to see that in these movies and see more powerful magic than Expelliarmus and Stupefy every other thing that happens. Got to see Nicholas Flamel in action. That was cool. If you guys listened to the Sorcerer's Stone episode, I kind of like him. So it was cool to see him in action a little bit. I liked the Nagini reveal when it first came out. Anytime I can learn more about the magical world and different things in the magical world, I enjoy that. I don't think Claudia Kim got really enough screen time in this movie. They didn't pay a whole lot of attention to Nagini, and at the end of the movie, she ends up on Newt's side and actually in a position to interact with Dumbledore in the future. So to me, it'd be kind of weird if she and Dumbledore interact a lot and then she goes off into the woods of Albania and eventually meets Voldemort. But, maybe that's a key for Voldemort. Maybe that's why he chooses her, because maybe she does know some inside information on Dumbledore. I don't know. I'm looking forward to learning that. I just think it's a little slippery slope there of putting her too close to Dumbledore, and then how close she becomes to Voldemort down the road. I do want to say a lot of people have problems with basically Voldemort enslaved her. I don't see it that way. I see, so she's a maledictus. Eventually her blood disease is going to take over and she's going to become a snake full time. At that point, here's my theory on this, is she escapes to the forests of Albania to live among other snakes because that's the only life she has. Eventually, this other being comes along, Voldemort. When he first went to Albania, I guess he was still in human form, and he can actually speak to snakes. And he meets her in Albania. He can speak to her. She can, kind of divulge her secrets to him. He can see that she's actually a human trapped in a snake's body. This is, to me, the first person she's been able to talk to in however many years since she became a full-on snake. She's just been living with snakes, and it's as beneficial for her to be around actual humans again, as it is for Voldemort to find somebody he can confide in, and he can confide whatever he wants in her because she can't tell his secrets, basically. So I think it actually is kind of a mutual bond, and that's why he holds her above pretty much everything else, even Wormtail or Barty Crouch or any of his Death Eaters, because I think they have a special bond. And, when he's floating in this corporeal method before he bonds with Quirrell, she might be the only thing he can communicate with as well, and he's the only thing she can communicate with at that time. So I do see it as much more of a symbiotic relationship between the two of them than he just enslaved her and turned him into his Horcrux. We don't even know. Maybe she volunteered that. Because they were so close at that point. It's possible in my mind. I have faith in J.K. Rowling and that she'll pull something out. But anyway, that was my 2 bits on Nagini. I've kind of been holding on that since they originally announced, what the Maledictus was and all of that. I just see this they form this bond through the kinship of snakes that they have, basically, that neither of them could in any other way. So Grindelwald uses, basically, he's very charismatic to gain his followers, and he uses the fear of World War II basically to start building a following. He shows visions of World War II, and I just thought this was kind of a great way in that time to build up this following for the greater good, basically saying we can stop this from happening. And you even see it in Jacob's eyes of people are worried at this point between World War I and World War II that there's going to be another war. The World War I was a war to end all wars. There can't be another one coming. So I can see how using that as a stepping stone and his general charisma. I mean, the speech he gives at the end is just amazing and would definitely garner fellowship. And the way he does it, in that I believe he had a woman in the crowd, basically a woman in the crowd. Pulled out her wand at an aura, and the aura killed the woman right in front of all his followers. He basically propagandized that woman to say, look, they're the violent ones, not us. We're just here having a gathering, and the aura struck out and killed this woman. It's kind of a genius ploy, and I think we're going to see, as the series progresses, him kind of rise to his power, in parallel to Hitler rising in his power in the same kind of way. They don't, you don't, when you are a fanatic and you're trying to, build this for the greater good following, you do it in the way he does. He recruits Queenie by saying, look, you can love whoever you want in my world. I don't care who it is. Really, he does. He thinks of not magical people as slaves, basically, but that's a good way to gain somebody. He knows he needs her and her ability to, read people's minds. He knows he needs that, so he tells her she can do what she wants, basically. I think you're going to see those kind of parallels to Hitler and how they gain their following. And that's how dictators rise to power. They basically say, look at this bad stuff over here that's happening. I can prevent that. And that's what he's doing with World War II here. Having said all that, I did like the movie, but I had some problems, and there are a lot of the same problems that other people had. That none of my first problem is kind of a petty one, but none of the Lestranges spoke with French accents, which is weird because they're this historically French family. I don't really want to see Zoe Kravitz try to butcher a French accent. I'm not a big fan of Zoe Kravitz, so I'm glad. I'm kind of glad that they didn't. It was just kind of strange to watch that, but from a filmmaking standpoint, it seemed like there were a lot of flaws. Just people would all of a sudden be in places that they weren't before. There's kind of weird cinematography going on, like really tight shots. The prison break at the beginning with the Thestrals seemed like it should have been really, really cool, but it was so dark you couldn't see what was going on, and a lot of that is because they technically can't pull off any of this stuff. So I can kind of see, but you couldn't see anything that was going on. So there were some gaps. I wouldn't say there were plot holes. There were just things that could have used filler scenes if this guy was here. Now all of a sudden he's here, and everybody knows he's there. It's not like he snuck in, or it just, there were some weird pacing issues, I guess, is the problem. And then there's the final twist, and I'll go into this for a little while. I don't know that I really liked it. I still, the final twist that Credence is, big spoilers, Albus Dumbledore's brother, was it seemed out of place at the end. I do have faith in J.K. Rowling. I know that she knows how to set up a story, and I think she will get there. This is going to be one of those things that we have to wait for it to play its course to really judge it. But it's just weird the way they brought it out. So I'm not really sure that I like it. That the timeline with him being Dumbledore's brother is kind of weird. So the crimes, I'll just go through the timeline real quick. The Crimes of Grindelwald takes place in 1927. Percival, Albus's father, was imprisoned in Azkaban in 1890. Kendra, Albus's mother, died in 1899. Credence was born in, it varies, 1901 to 1904. After the first movie, it was said 1904, but that boat trip, the Lestrange boat trip took place in 1901, so he obviously had to be born before 1901. It's kind of weird if he's born 2 years after Kendra's died and 10 years after Percival is imprisoned. It would be really hard to have a baby while imprisoned in Azkaban. That's just my thought. But what do I know? And then it's possible maybe Kendra died from giving birth to Credence and not Ariana's Obscurus lashing out. I don't know. If Kendra is his mother, then he's probably not Dumbledore because Percival was in prison. Percival could be his father and Kendra not his mother. If he found someone to have a baby with while in Azkaban. It's very, very strange with the timeline of it all and how it would work. My original theory after walking out of the movie was Grindelwald lied to him, basically. He needs somebody to attack Dumbledore. No sane person is willing to attack Dumbledore, but if you feed him the story that he's actually Albus's brother and he's been neglected and Albus is ignoring him even further, he can get the Obscurus to attack Dumbledore, basically. It's just a straight up lie. He either conjured the Phoenix out of nowhere, or it's a pretend Phoenix, basically, or it's a real Phoenix that he just happened to have. I mean, there's nothing. They tell the story that the Phoenix will come to Dumbledore's in need, but there's no reason that other people can't have them. There's a lot of weird stuff going on. That was my original theory, is that he's just straight up lying in order to get Credence to attack Albus. And then I've read some more things. I've listened to a couple podcasts about the overall Crimes of Grindelwald. And I think the new theory that I'm going to subscribe to, because it makes the best sense, is the one that I heard on Binge Mode Harry Potter. Listen to Binge Mode Harry Potter. It's fantastic. Jason and Mallory do a great job of breaking down Harry Potter, and it has renewed my love of Harry Potter, which is great. But their theory is basically that Queenie is basically communicating with the Obscurus inside Credence, and that's why he needed Queenie. Grindelwald needed Queenie to basically read the Obscurus's mind, because you can't talk to an Obscurus. So that's why he recruited Queenie, and then the Obscurus is actually a Dumbledore. Credence, the host, Credence, is not actually a Dumbledore, but the Obscurus inside him is the one from Ariana. Basically, when Ariana died, it broke out of her and found a new host, which is Credence. And so he's talking directly to the Obscurus, saying, "You're Albus's brother." Earlier in the movie, Albus talks about how an Obscurus is like a dark twin to the host. So maybe that dark twin is actually, like, there's actual Credence in that, and excuse the pun. So I like that theory that the Obscurus is the thing that's related to Dumbledore, because that makes more sense than, well, he's just lying for lying's sake, because that doesn't play out very well in 3 more movies. Whereas learning more about the Obscurus and how it detaches and attaches it to itself to different hosts would be cool to learn. So that's the one I'm going with. If you've got other theories, send them at me on Twitter. I like to hear everything and take it in, but this is the one I really like. Again, overall, I liked it better than the first one. I think we're really going to have to wait until the series is over and grade the series as a whole. I don't think each movie is going to be very good on its own. We could really tell with this movie that it can't stand on its own. It needs 3 more movies to figure out. Fantastic Beasts, the first one, kind of stood on its own. Even then, it was just like, we're introducing a lot of stuff so you can see it in 4 more movies. This one, even more so, went down that path. I think the whole is going to be better than the sum of the parts in this case. I think for J.K. Rowling, it's really hard to build this story out the way she wants as movies rather than in books, because there are certain visual limitations and time restraints that come with making movies versus writing novels. So I think we're seeing a little bit of that in the first 2 movies, and I think as the series goes on, there's 3 more movies that will kind of wrap itself up. I have trust in her that by the end of it, it will all make sense, and I will be satisfied with it. If I'm not, I'll go back and read the original series and be happy and satisfied with that, and just kind of forget this exists, like Cursed Child. I haven't read Cursed Child yet. I plan to, but in my mind right now, it doesn't really exist. So those are my thoughts on Crimes of Grindelwald. Thank you for listening. Be sure to rate, review, and subscribe. If you're on iTunes, follow me on Twitter at APA something. You can always send feedback through email. Give me those Credence theories or the Aurelius Dumbledore theories. The email address is apodcastaboutsomething@gmail.com. Remember, you can always visit our Patreon. It's patreon.com/podcastaboutsomething, and sign up for one of those tiers to donate to support the show. You can kind of see what the different benefits for each tier is if you go to the site. If you don't want to sign up for the monthly donations, I accept any and all donations through PayPal. The PayPal address is podcastaboutsomething@gmail.com. Send me whatever you think will help. Believe me, everything helps. You'll get a shout out on the show if you send me something. You probably get a sticker or anything like that. So just keep listening. Thank you. Tell your friends. Stay classy.